Hi, and welcome to the first episode of the Good Enough Mums Club podcast, where sometimes being good enough is best.
Just before we get started, this episode has content warnings for postnatal psychosis, depression, intrusive thoughts, and suicide.
And there are a couple of swear words throughout this podcast, so if that's not for you, or you have kids in the car with you, it might be worth waiting for bedtime.
How will I ever be good enough? When will the loneliness fade? When will it fade away? Why does it have to be so tough? Hard as I try, I'll never be good enough.
My name is Emily Beecher.
And I'm Jade Samuels. We will be your hosts for this series of the Good Enough Mums Club podcast.
Every week, we'll initiate a mum into the club and explore the complexities and realities of modern motherhood.
You can join the club or find out more about the musical or future episodes of the podcast by following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by searching Good Enough Mums Club. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, rate and review wherever you listen.
We're so excited that our first guest is the amazing and incredibly stylish Laura Dockrill, author and mum to her son Jet. Her memoir, What Have I Done?, is about surviving postnatal mental illness and was described by none other than Adele as a book to save a whole generation of women. We caught up with her in the midst of lockdown on Zoom and had such a great chat about lots of things, as you'll see, but especially about her experience with postnatal psychosis, which, as someone who's experienced it myself, was so honest and so relatable. And she talks about it with such understanding.
Also, that morning, Jet had done his first pee in the potty, and she was so proud and excited in the celebration that she actually kicked said potty over.
Which is basically the perfect representation of motherhood, the highs and the lows.
Let's jump in. We kick off, as we will with all of our guests, with a round of Would You Rather.
Would you rather step on Lego or step in pee?
Step in pee, definitely. I just did it about 5 minutes ago. No, guess what actually happened? He's done his first triumphant wee in the potty, celebration all round, full morning piss, hot, steaming, full. I picked it up in triumph and tripped up and spilt the whole potty on the carpet. So I've just defeated the object of him weeing in the potty. So that's where I'm at.
Oh, God. I remember Maisie picked it up once and brought it to me in that shaky toddler.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's everywhere.
Exactly.
Okay, which is cuter, baby shoes or baby hats?
Shoes are cuter.
Would you rather sleep in or have a nap?
Sleep in.
Amen.
Clean up poo or clean up puke?
Clean up poo. Definitely.
Would you rather be stuck in a room with a teething baby or a hormonal teenager for a week?
Teenagers I can deal with, not the teething baby.
If you had to watch one Disney film on repeat 5 times a day, every day, forevermore, which movie are you watching?
I feel like this is what I'm doing, all this stuff at the moment. This is like my life. You're like, these are like, what would you rather? And I'm like, but this is actually my life. It's quite sad. Well, at the moment, it's Coco on repeat. So Coco, I suppose, I'm having it right
Coco.
Now. It's good. Coco. I don't mind it. I know it off by heart now.
First word that you think of when you think of the word mum?
Survival.
You only get one of these for the rest of your life. Red lipstick or pink lipstick?
Gotta be pink lipstick. I've got red on today, but that's because I just thought I'm pinking it out too hard. I can't give up my pink.
And you have the most amazing pink lipstick. I remember when I met you at the Guardian, I was like, that is the most amazing shade I have ever seen on anyone.
Candy Yum Yum is called.
Candy Yum Yum. Is that what it is? It's awesome.
Yes.
For those of you who don't know, Laura has written an incredible book. I'm holding it up like you can all see it, called What Have I Done? About her experience of, I guess, basically surviving early days of motherhood and postpartum psychosis, which we'll get to. But how was it in the beginning for you getting pregnant? Like, what was your journey to being a mom like?
my partner Hugo, I say in the book, but we've actually been best friends since we were 13 years old. So I've known him for a really long time. But in terms of us actually being together, we had only been a couple for under a year, so for about 6-7 months. So maybe to the outside world, it seemed really premature that we got pregnant so quickly. But for us, it didn't feel like that. It felt like instinctively like the right thing to do, and I just kind of knew. It didn't feel scary or weird. And my pregnancy actually was really enjoyable. It felt like for the first time in my life I wasn't kind of being a fraud or doing anything like I didn't know how to do. I felt safe and secure. I kind of felt immune, like people couldn't fall out with me, and like I couldn't get a cold because I was doing like the big life thing. And for the first time ever, like if I'd wake up in the middle of the night, as you do quite a lot when you're pregnant, I didn't mind it. I kind of enjoyed sitting there and having a bagel and watching TV at 2 a.m. Got the normal things towards the end, like backache, and it was a really enjoyable experience. And I didn't overdo it on the research, but I didn't also be naive. I was kind of open for it. I didn't overly plan the birth or anything, so that's why it was kind of so shocking what happened.
Yeah. So do you want to talk us through sort of what happened? I guess the story really starts with the birth, doesn't it?
Yeah. It does. So I was 2 weeks overdue, and again, I mean, I know everybody is different, and so I'm kind of, and it's not fair to compare, but as far as somebody who's 40 weeks pregnant looks, I did not look anything like the stereotype. I was showing really small, and I was very active. Like I didn't kind of have that full teapot look that you see storybook mums look like. I actually went for a run on the day of him being born, the day before he was born, 2 weeks overdue. I felt not overly energized, like to the point of mania, but I felt like I could do stuff. I was active and busy, and we kind of just thought, well, he needs to kind of come out now. We kept ringing the hospital, but because it was Valentine's Day, apparently everybody wants a baby on Valentine's Day. They kept trying to, and I was thinking, this is not booking a hotel in Paris, guys. Like, this baby needs to come out. So they gave us an induction. We went down there. So we had a pessary induction, which, for those that don't know, it's basically like a tampon that is covered in hormones. So when it goes up, it's meant to encourage the first signs of labour. By now, I'd had 5 stretch and sweeps, which is basically being fingered, not in a good way. And that went up there, and by now I was kind of like, I mean, they are painful and uncomfortable. Kind of, you feel very exposed as well. They're not very nice, and nothing kind of happened. And the idea is that they kind of, I thought they were going to send me back home. That was the plan. They're going to put the tampon in me and then send me off. And I kind of thought, oh, great. Then in the night, everything's going to happen. You kind of got this vision in your mind from when you see in the films, like, Look Who's Talking, whatever, that this theatre of with your waters is going to splatter on the ground, and it's like all stations go, and it couldn't have been further from the truth. And so when they showed me where my room I was going to have this baby, it was like somebody saying, okay, can you cough a lung out, please? Because I was like, I'm not, like, this isn't going to be possible. Like, and I started thinking, this is like, I don't know, like I was on punked or something. I was like, this is a joke. And then my blood pressure was just increasing. My heart rate was just jumping out my skin. And I had my first panic attack, which I've never experienced before in my life. It wasn't too bad. Now that I speak to friends who have them, who suffer from them, it was fine. I could manage it, but it definitely felt scary. And because it was all to do with my heart at the time, I did think, am I having a heart attack? And then from there onwards, it was just one bit of bad news to the next, really. We'd found out that I'd had undetected preeclampsia, which is a complication that happens during pregnancy, which basically meant that my placenta had failed. So my baby wasn't getting any nutrients. What happened to Jet is that he had got fat in the womb, and then he had sort of starved. So when he came out, he had all this extra baggy skin from where he once was plump. In my brain, I kind of just, even though I was showing small, I just kind of thought that he was this big chunky thing, like hiding in my ribs or something, that he was like a big chunky thing that would come out when he did. The umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck twice. We tried to do an epidural, which also failed, another form of induction, which also failed. I had injection in my back of my spine, my bum, but it felt like my bum. A massive crochet kind of hook to manually break the waters, which was like something from the Victorian days.
That thing is so long, isn't it? And it's like
it's a
you are
hook,
coming, it's like Captain Hook is coming towards your fanny, and you're like, what are you doing?
In fact, it reminds me of at school, we were learning about how they get the brains out of dead bodies in the Egyptian times.
Yes.
And pull the brain out through the nostril, and like horrible histories or something. And I was like, that's what that is.
That's exactly what it looks like.
But all these things is when your failure as a not just as a mum, but as a woman, as a person, like start kicking into gear, because midwives would say things like, it's not their fault, but they would go, oh, that's the first time I've ever failed to break waters. And you're like, oh, okay, is that something wrong with me? And actually, again, not her fault, but the breaking of the waters scratched all Jet's head, so his head was bleeding, and when he came out, and that really distressed him, and that's when meconium came, so he pooed inside me. So that's when everything, and they have to get the baby out by a certain amount of time, and that's really when the pressure goes on. So in the end, I just called an emergency cesarean. And then, because, I mean, if you have a cesarean anyway, sometimes it can take a little bit longer for the milk to come, especially an emergency cesarean. So then I had the most it was like a sick joke, like the most hungry baby in the world who then wouldn't take, because there was no milk. So it was just this like wrestle where it was literally the literal Hunger Games. And that's when things just started getting out of control. Really.
Yeah, because I think at one point, I wasn't sure of the timeline exactly, but at one point you literally feed him he's on your boob for 24 hours straight.
Well, that was for about 8 days. There was at one point I caught sight of my feeding notes, because the midwives keep a log, and it was like 18 hours with a 10-hour break, then for another 5 hours, maybe a 5-minute break, and he just wouldn't sleep. He was and looking back now, I'm like, of course he did. He was absolutely starving. If I would have been starved, I'd fuck on a rock if I believed that eventually it was going to give me milk. He's surviving. So great. I'm so glad he did that. He saved his own life. But looking back, I am a little bit like, could someone not have just told me to give him some formula?
Yeah.
Like, why didn't anyone say, give the kid some formula? He's been starving inside me for 2 weeks. And there was such a fear that he was going to die of, his blood sugar levels were so low. This incredible midwife, who literally in my mind is an angel, dressed him in every single layer of baby clothes that we had with us, and warmed him physically like a baby chick, like literally rubbed her hands together to. If you've ever tried to breastfeed somebody, the only thing I can describe it like is like when you see a man, like a caveman trying to start a fire. That's what it's like. It's like getting 2 sticks and really patient. It's not like the movies where your milk just effortlessly flows from your bosom and there I am. Eventually it can get to that, but it's really difficult. And also because we weren't expecting to be so small and fragile, I didn't even feel he was under 5 pounds. So holding him, and then this ward is, if anyone's been in a ward before, it's a bloody carousel of hell. It's just like taking turns to cry and keep alive, basically. And you can't sleep. They don't allow you to sleep like with the baby on your chest. So you have to physically put the baby down before you can let him sleep. Not that he ever did. So sleep just slipped through my fingers. I didn't sleep again. I think I got an hour over the next 3.5 weeks.
Wow. That's, I can't believe they didn't so in Canada, when I had Maisie, they encourage them sleeping on you as long as there's another adult around. I can't believe they just sort of kept you going. At what point do they not step in? Like, breast is best, but you're killing the mother slowly.
Absolutely that. And actually, I think there was no human. That's what I looking back. There was no human for me to really latch on to. I had so many midwives, I had so many doctors. It was panic stations from what was meant to be a normal, and I'm doing speech marks, but like from what was meant to be a normal labour, there wasn't really a single person that said, this is the situation. There's no, it's kind of just grabbing onto any kind of rope that I possibly could. And the same in the ward, which I was there for a week. I just felt like it was, and in one way it was good. It was a crash course in motherhood. You've got mothers from every walk of life thrashing the curtain open and saying, do that, do this, do that. But actually then it was also overwhelming. And I really do think my brain just popped.
So what happened? Talk us through the timeline of what happened. So you were in the hospital for 8 days?
Yeah, and then we eventually got let out. In fact, they didn't even want us to leave when we did, because Jet and I were patients in our own right, because I'd obviously had the cesarean, and I also got this rare side effect of the cesarean where I had awful scratching all over my whole. I was scratching till I was bleeding. It was just the most uncomfortable. So anyway, I was there. Then he was also a patient because he was so underweight and his blood sugar levels were so low. So we had to wait, and then my midwife came, and the midwife I've been seeing for my pregnancy came and managed to discharge us. And then I kind of had this idea that when we got home, everything would be okay. I sort of had like a Walt Disney version, like, okay, when we get home, it's going to be all right. And when we got in, my house just didn't feel like my house. It sort of had that like holiday house feeling, or like an Airbnb when you walk into someone else's house and you're like, okay, I've got to make this my home in a week or whatever. Hugo said, oh, let's just all get into it. It felt really cold and just distant from me, and we all got into the bed, and Hugo just fell asleep. I don't know how men can do it. He was just like knocked out snoring, and I was like,
they do, don't they?
Jesus.
I'll never forget with Ray's dad. We're not together, but Ray's dad, he could just sleep through her. One time I was really upset, actually. We were together in bed and he was asleep, and Ray was crying, and he went, well, you shut up, in his sleep like that. And I was like really upset, and he woke up the next day, and I was like really cold and really upset with him, and he was like, what's wrong with you? I said, you told Ray to shut up in her sleep. And he said, I'm really, really sorry. I swear to God, I didn't know.
Yeah. They just, how he sleeps through it, it's just unbelievable. Well, this is what this guy was doing. And then Jet was sleeping, and then that's when I kind of knew something was wrong with me, because they were both asleep and I hadn't slept by now for, as I said, for about 8-9 days. You don't really see, do you, leading up to it? And then everyone's giving you these, make sure you get when you're sleeping before the baby comes. It's like, that's impossible. I still have shit to do. And that sounds like a coma, to be honest. I'd be worried if I was getting all my sleep in one go. That means you're dead. So that doesn't help. Anyway, so when they were asleep and I wasn't, that's when I started thinking. And I had these feelings like, when you're little and you've got that Monday before school, that Sunday night before school and a Monday morning feeling, that doom and that dread, like times a million. I was like, something's not right, but I can't put my finger on it. The next week, I was experiencing extreme insomnia, which I've never experienced before. So every time Jet was sleeping, I wasn't just going, oh, it will be okay. I was going to the doctors and I was saying, I can't sleep. And then I was eventually at one point going every single day to the GPs, seeing a different GP each time, but saying how I was feeling. And literally from one day to the next, I would have more additions to my symptoms. So it wouldn't just be I couldn't sleep. I was saying, I feel like something really bad's going to happen and I can't put my finger on it. And they would say, like, what? And I would say, like, I don't know, like a psychiatric like an ambulance is coming to get me, or like I've done something wrong, like a van's coming to get me, and they were kind of like, okay. But no one said this was a delusion, or they would go, this is baby blues. It's normal to not feel normal after this. And then I was counting days in my mind, but because of the ward, it seemed like I'd only just given birth because I was there for so long. But actually looking back, I'm like, now I'm like 12 days into it, and this is past that 10-day period. But again, I don't blame anybody, because the illness makes you lie. The illness wants you to hide it. Society wants you to hide it. You feel embarrassed. You don't feel comfortable to say that. You're scared in case somebody takes your baby away from you. So I didn't want Hugo to think I was a failure and I didn't know what I was doing. I wanted him to feel safe. I mean, this is a guy that asked me a week before the baby was going to be born if he was going to have teeth. So I'm thinking, I've got to hold it together here. Also for my job, it's like I write children's book. I feel like I'm a big sister. I've always nannied and cared for children for my job. It's like I kind of thought this was my time when I'd know what to do. All those years of not knowing how to do wires and the dishwasher and all that life stuff. I was like, this is my chance. And so then again, it just was escalating so rapidly. So no appetite. Other things as well. So I had an emergency cesarean, but I was bleeding uncontrollably, and the blood was really frightening because I didn't, expect that amount of blood to be pouring out of me as well. So I started thinking maybe I was, I don't know, losing all my blood at one point. Then so not sleeping, not eating. Then I started avoiding people. I just couldn't concentrate on anything. So like even a sentence, I'd go to literally make a cup of tea and I'd forget in that 1 second what I was doing, which I know seems normal, but all these things were out of my control. Like literally typing on my phone or an email, I'd see in my, sounds silly, but all these things mount up. You just know yourself. But in my like keyboard on my phone, all my emojis were like not emojis I would normally use. I just felt like my messages didn't sound like me. And even people that sent me congratulations messages on having a baby that I didn't even know that well said my reply was a bit odd. And I knew that. And then I would, throughout the day, just experience kind of never euphoria, but heightened mood, not happy, but just like kind of like everything was okay, like a kind of breeziness, to then just the pits of like terror, just pure terror. I started thinking that I was connected somehow to this plant we had outside, like an olive tree, that it was winter, so the tree had no leaves on it. I started thinking that it like represented my womb and that I was somehow I guess in tandem with it, and it was kind of warning me of what was to come. That any text messages I got or messages from the people, songs on the radio, were all warning me. And then someone basically got us a giant teddy bear as a present, like some 6-foot teddy. And I started thinking that the bear was filming me with like CCTV, and I wanted to cut it open and see what was going, like if it was filming me.
I know a couple other people that had similar. That was their sort of like the turning point in their delusions, going from being things that you could almost convince yourself are real, like that's something that I've done something bad. You can convince yourself that you've done something bad, but that there's something big. And I know another person where it was a giant kangaroo, and they were convinced it was filming them and reporting back on them. And that was that sort of change in the delusion. Did that feel different to you, or did it still just absolutely make sense in your delusion? That I guess I always had a part of my brain that I felt like there was a part of my brain that was still really sane, for lack of a better word, that kind of knew that something was wrong. And then there was another part of my brain that was so messed up it had no idea what was going on. And I was always really worried about which one would have the bigger percentage.
Totally that. Totally. And there's I think there's 3 threads running here. There's like the undercurrent of you as a person who's lived on this planet for all these years and has a vague sense of, am I safe or am I not, or what my thoughts are. And then there's this other thread that's coping with the action and terror at hand, which is you've just had a baby, so it's like all hands on deck physically. It's a hands on deck scenario where you're using the front of your brain to just get shit done. And then you've got the psychosis, which is just then flipping everything, and it really is wrestling with yourself, coming up for air. As you say, there's those moments where you have clarity and rationality and you breathe and you go, what the hell, like, but then you're just pulled under again and you lose everything. And actually I always say now, when anyone is unwell, let yourself go to the wind, just let it happen. Because if you try and hold on to those voices, like, you'll get there, you'll find yourself, you'll remember yourself, you will, and your people around you love you and know you enough to get you through to the other side. But you hold on to that one shred of dignity or pride and go, I'm okay, like, I'm fine. It's just like, no, this is just bigger than you, and it's your body. Just do what the doctors tell you to do what your friends and family know what is best for you. And that's I think why I recovered so quickly, was because I'm such a goody. I listened to everything everyone bloody told me to do, and I got better very quick. But those people that, you know, go, oh no, I know better and I can get through this on my own, I'm sure you can pull yourself out of psychosis on your own, but it's going to be a really painful, scary, long journey and unpredictable.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, what was that tipping point then? What was the point where you went, like, when someone really intervened? What was the crux, basically?
I found that I was telling some truths to some people and not to others, and which was really scary as well, because then I couldn't remember what lies I'd kind of laid down with some people. I'm not a very good liar. That was difficult. And then I'd have these moments where I kind of thought I was like smarter than everybody else and like I could sort of see it all. And so that just fucking didn't help either. I mean, to be totally honest with you, and I'm so sorry if this is triggering for anybody, but the suicidal thoughts were so huge that and again, with that same point you made it earlier, Emily, I had 2 suicidal streams too. So I had the suicidal thoughts in the psychosis, which was like, I must follow this through because so-and-so needs to happen. But then I had a really rational suicidal kind of urge too, which was like the same thing that I'm sure makes people jump out of really high burning buildings, because they think they're going to die really slowly and painfully in a fire. or people jumping out of the Titanic. I was like, I'm going to maybe do something really, really bad or to somebody else. I'm scared of what that looks like. So maybe I need to take some control, which actually I kind of get that. I kind of get the rationality behind that. So those two, basically, and that's what made it so urgent.
It was totally the same thing for me. I think reading the book, it was like you were in my head. There were so many things that I think are exactly the same in that experience. But I always had in my suicidal thoughts, not necessarily that I had to do it, but it was like a presentation. But there was always one element that was really bizarre. And I had this film that played in my head of me hanging from a tree. And it was really specific, except I was in like an American Civil War costume. And it was like, it was really,
of course it was really
filmic. It was like a close up of my head and it pulls out and there's a noose around my neck and then it pans wider and I am wearing this. And it was like, my brain was like, okay, you can have this, but also we're going to remind you that it's not real as at the same time. Like it's going to torture me and pull me back at the same time.
Yes, I totally hear that, because mine was all mixed up in a play that I'd seen called Yerma, which was incredible, which I kind of roughly loosely know the heroine in it. So I guess then that was like playing into mine. So mine was very blown up, very cinematic, very theatrical. But again, this point always pisses me off. I mean, I've gone through all these things in my head, of course, over the last couple of years, but then people go, oh, have you got quite an overactive imagination? Is that why you had psychosis? And I'm like, fuck you. Like, it doesn't matter what your imagination's like.
I was literally just about to ask, do you think they were so big and so cinematic, both of your illusions, because you're both writers, so you were even more creative with the ideas in your head?
See, I go through all these things, and I have had that, of course, and actually even some of my my doctor's notes when I was going, it says she's an author for a job, storyteller, like quite an overactive imagination, and that I find that really unfair, because you feel like you're a little bit like that kid in school that like makes a big lie up that everyone believes or something for the drama or for the sake of it. And let me tell you now, like, no, I will zip it. I want that quiet, peaceful life. Yeah, I enjoy telling stories, but that's my job. Like, I don't want that. I would tell nice stories. Like, I don't want that to I've never had a suicidal thought in my life. Like, I don't have a bone in my body that wants to not be on this planet. So that upsets me. And so did not upsets me anymore, but that's something that I feel always like I want to defend for people that have experienced psychosis. But also the whole, oh, is it your first baby sort of thing? Like, as if I had a really Hollywood vision of what it's like having a child. And oh, were you jealous of other mums on social media and it didn't quite go your way, so you lost the plot? And that as well, it's like, I understand why these statements are thrown at you, but I know people that have had psychosis that don't want any attention to them at all. They're not confident, storytellers, or people that you would call, exaggerated minds. So I don't know, it just seems a bit sloppy to me to say that. But then how do you know what is a suicidal thought? How is that's just an intrusive thought? Just because you are standing at a train and it says, stand back, train is not stopping, and you think, God, what if I fall through myself in front of it? That doesn't mean you're having a suicidal thought. If anything, maybe that means you want to grab onto life more because you're scared of that.
Definitely.
And I think there's so much confusion about what intrusive thoughts are. And I think they can be the simplest things, but they're things that you believe you just either have to do, or that you're going to see, or if you don't do, something bad will happen.
Well, people have them with their babies, and that doesn't mean, if I held a new baby and I go, oh, imagine if I dropped it down the stairs, that doesn't mean I'm a baby killer.
Yeah.
That's just holding onto a baby and going, this is really precious and important and I don't want to drop it,
Absolutely. So after this sort of the time with the suicidal thoughts, how did that transition to you being hospitalized?
So I just got to the point where I believed that my partner's dad was hypnotizing me, and they brought me back to the house. We'd gone to give Jet some jabs, and I just, at that point, I was just completely gone. And I FaceTimed one of my friends who, bizarrely, I was kind of still in communication with her, even though I was so unwell at this point. And I said to her, I've been hypnotized and it's all become clear now. I'm a master of the dark arts, and I'm going to do something really bad. And she was really calm and like collected about it. I don't know how. And then went away and Googled psychosis in after birth. And it came up straight away with all my symptoms on the NHS website and said, this is a medical emergency. And she rang Hugo. It was like midnight at this point. And she went, look, you're going to tell me to fuck off if you want. Like, tell me I'm crazy. And then he was like, that's it. That's what Laura's got. And at 1 a.m, I was taken across London to this hospital, completely hysterical. When I got there, the psychiatric ward did it again. It's how media lies to you. It's like not this. I had this like insidious, stereotypical vision of what tabloid, sensationalized version of what a psychiatric ward looks like. Everyone in white jackets and padded cells, just looked like a kind of office space. And I was like, oh, okay. Then no, that didn't help. I was like, am I a guinea pig? Is this an experiment? Am I in Black Mirror? Am I in a police station? And then they kind of wanted to interview my psychotic self. So I had to kind of do a full-on chat. I was so tired. As I said, I hadn't slept for weeks now. And I just kept saying, I just want to sleep. But I told them everything. So I went as dark as I possibly could. So, for example, Emily, like what you just said with your vision of you hanging, every single dark thought I had, I kind of just wanted, in your mind, you have this vision that you've been hijacked by a demon or a ghost. I just wanted to exercise it, to say, this is what it is. This is what it's doing to me. This is, calling it out like a bully, basically. And they were everything down. And they sedated me. I don't know what with, but suddenly something took me down. And then I woke up the next morning on Mother's Day. And there was just somebody in the room watching me sleep. And it was literally like waking up in a zombie apocalypse movie thinking, oh my God, this is how my life has gone. This is what has happened to me.
And how long were you hospitalized for?
Only 2 weeks. I say only, but which is actually not very long for my illness.
No.
Many women are there for a long, long time. But I was in general psych. I didn't go to mother and baby unit. So that was quite frightening because looking back, the whole thing really was even crazier because I didn't exactly know what I had. So that was the Sunday I woke up, and on the Monday from 9 till 5, I had to go to group therapy all day long, every day. But my mind was spinning and racing, and I was in a room with people suffering from schizophrenic disorder, bipolar disorder, eating disorders, alcoholism. So I just felt like, what is this? Why am I here, sort of thing? Whole lapses of time would stop and spin, and I was bleeding. So physically, I didn't know how to take care of myself. My boobs had milk coming out of them. I was separate from Jet. I was literally like being back in school again, where you're leaking on chairs and stuff again, like when you first start your period. And I'm thinking, what is going on, basically? I was just trying to, and then halfway through that, the paranoias and suspicions ramped up another gear. And I started thinking that Hugo and his family were planning this was all a bigger plan, conspiracy theory to get rid of me, to keep Jet for himself. And my mum was in on it, and she was doing that to try and get a chance to be with Jet whilst I was hospitalised. And in a way, I'm grateful for that because it made sure I got out of that hospital, boy, because I was like, I'm getting out of this place. I need to get my son back. And actually that drive, that instinct, that came from somewhere. And even though it was dangerous, those delusions, it made sure that I basically made a point of going, I'm not going to miss a single class. I'm going to eat every meal. I'm going to take every single medication. I had this idea in my mind that I was going to be in front of a jury at some point, and I needed to make sure that I looked like an A-star student. But you know what? I did it, and just going back to what you said earlier, Jade, about that, and I completely know why people say those things, with the imagination thing. But, there was ages where I thought, oh God, did I do this to myself? Did I make myself ill? But, even if I did, my own mind, like, I got myself out, and that's a fact. And that's the bit I hold on to.
I've never experienced anything close to what you and Emily have. So this is me giving a disclaimer saying I can't even imagine what you guys went through. But giving birth, you lose your mind, full stop, anyway. Do you know what I mean? I do believe why it takes so long for postpartum psychosis and depression to be diagnosed is because people just think, oh, it's baby blues. They're just under the weather. They've not slept. They've been through a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
Because when I was giving birth, I saw pirates, and I told the doctor, I did, I swear to God, You ask my mum said it was the scariest thing she'd ever seen in her life. I saw pirates. I swear to God.
And
like
the pirates, was it scary or was it like a nice thing? Or was
it was fine. I mean, I'd
fine.
taken all the drugs. I didn't care. Do you know what I mean? When you're giving birth, you're in that space. It's Emily and I were saying as well. Like I laughed at the book because I got Ray's dad to shave my vagina before I gave birth because I thought I can't have everyone looking at my hairy vagina. And
but like, you don't give a shit, do you?
No, but then there were like 10 people down there at one stage while Ray was trying to get out of me.
And
no one's caring about the pubes.
And nobody cares about.
And I couldn't have cared less.
You think are important, yeah. It's the
like,
things that you think are important before.
It's because you got time on your hands before though as well, isn't it? I couldn't have cared less if my pubes were to my toes at that stage. I just wanted that baby out.
I think you're right. I think also you're trying to give yourself the best possible chance, aren't you? So you're thinking, if I want to just do this the best I can, I don't want my pubes to bother me. You know, I don't want something like that.
Sounds ridiculous.
I totally get that. I totally get that. I think you're just giving yourself. It's like nature's way of. It's not even about vanity. It's just like I don't want a single bit of insecurity or a niggle to be there when I'm trying to push and do my thing, my woman's work. I don't want it to be a bit in the way. I get that. And then, I mean, it's really interesting what you're just saying because my little sister, she just, did had it. 10 months, her baby is, and she was only now, she's like, I didn't have what you had, but I only now feel normal. I only now feel like I can have a beer and actually be present in a room with somebody and talk. And it's just not spoken about.
You do lose a bit of your mind, 100%. Everybody does at that stage when they have a baby.
How long did it take before you felt like Laura?
To be honest with you, Emily, even when I met you, and you told me you'd had what I had, I didn't even take it in. And actually, I think it felt too unbelievable for me that somebody could be sitting opposite me and like writing beautiful work, being capable and a badass, basically sitting in front of me going, I had what you had. I just thought I can't even engage with this because I'm never going to recover. And when I met you, I was still going through battling insomnia, battling new things that I never had until I got unwell. So anxiety of it coming back, intrusive thoughts, superstitious thinking, like all these kind of behavioral traits that I never knew I did until, fortune telling, thinking I knew what was happening, just anxiety basically. And then so I'm off the medication, and I feel at the moment, and have done since January, the best I've ever felt in my life. But I owe that to my illness. I think I had to get there to understand how wonderful life is, and also that it is hard and it's dark too. But that's all part of this ride, I guess. And you can't get one without the other. I kind of saw the world, I think, a little bit through rose-tinted glasses before this, and I would have liked to have been perceived as a strong woman because I was obsessed with Scary Spies. But in reality, a strong woman maybe doesn't have to be loud and big, and you just can overcome something in your life that you just got to be there. You show up and you get through it and you get to the other side, and you don't need the accolade or the no one at the end when I came off my meds went, you did it, you're off the meds. Like, no one. I
was just going to say that to you. I was just about to be like, holy shit. I mean, I'm still on meds 10 years later.
Yeah. And I know they're there if I need them again. And it wasn't the first time I came off them. I didn't relapse. I had anxiety going, I'm too scared to not do life without meds. And probably around my wedding, which was in February, and Jet was turning 2, I thought I need to go back on them. I'm too scared. Did it again before lockdown and then held out, and seems to be okay for now. But I'm so grateful they exist, and I feel like it's just, isn't it nice to know we will have that like Spider-Man web to like catch us if we fall off a top of a tree, that they're there.
Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful to them. So I'm not on them today, but that doesn't mean a successful thing or a failure to me. It just means it's just life, boys. Like, but you know what? My back bloody hurts and my leg hurts, so they're annoying things. So I need help with other things. So how I see it, the body's a body, and it's all the same, and there's no shame in getting help.
Absolutely.
So what made you want to write the book?
I kind of had to, because I wrote that blog. I think you might have seen it, Emily, with Clemmy Telford. Clemmy and I were pregnant around the same time, and her sister is my friend. So we kind of were updating each other. We were due around the same time. She went ahead, had Greta, had the whole Jaffa cake experience where you eat your Jaffa cakes and you give birth, and my Jaffa cakes were just in my suitcase, crushed, like, no. Didn't get eaten. And then, okay, so we have a sort of vision again in our minds of what a postnatal depression person looks like, that you're kind of a mum going around in a nightie being crazy, like that woman in Jane Eyre or something. And that's, again, what ITV dramas and stuff, the movies do to us, that we're kind of washed out and faded, or, are you all right, mum, sort of thing. And actually, that's interesting, because a lot of the women I've spoken to since I've gone through my illness, working closely with Action on Postpartum Psychosis, I mean, there is a lot of humour in psychosis, but also it's not weak. It's the opposite of weak. You are like bionic. Like, I had hysterical strength. Like, I felt like I could lift cars and points. I did not feel weak and faded and washed out. Points I did, but certainly not in psychosis. So that was that. And I felt like I wanted to take a sort of ownership of what had happened to me, and not have this, people straight away think you've got postnatal depression or postpartum psychosis. Well, first of all, most people don't even know about postpartum psychosis or the difference between the two, but they have in their mind that you're a baby killer. And mine had nothing to do with Jet. I just wanted Jet to be somewhere safe, away from me, more because I didn't want him to see me hate myself as much as what I did. And I thought that was toxic for him. I didn't think I deserved to know him, and that I didn't deserve him. Not that I wanted to kill him for a single second.
Absolutely. The first thing someone said to me is, "Are they taking Maisie away from you?" And it was like, no, they aren't. I'm not going to hurt her. But I was so convinced that I was contaminating her life. And if I stayed in her life, that it was going to be ruined. And me being her mum and me being around her was going to stop her from being a good person. Like, it was going to ruin her life just being her mum.
I'm so sorry.
That must be even worse. I know. That must be awful as well, though, because your fear as a parent is constantly, will someone take my child away anyway? So for the first thing someone says when you have these intrusive thoughts and you're honest about it is, oh, so are you going to lose the baby? It's just so thoughtless.
Totally. So basically, I felt like I kind of had to take some sort of ownership back to say that it's not a baby. I wasn't a baby killer, but not to defend myself, to say, this is how complex this illness is. And I was a perfectly normal person walking around like everybody else. I'd never experienced anything of note happen to me in the past, any hidden trauma. I hadn't had any mental health issues prior to this. And maybe I was walking around with a bit of it's not my own fault, but like a naivety, thinking that I just couldn't get mentally unwell because I'm not that kind of person. That you sort of think, oh, there's people that get mentally unwell and there's people that not. When actually that's like walking around thinking you couldn't get hit by a car, or that you're immune from cancer or being attacked. It's like, no, that's not how this world works. It's kaleidoscopic, and we're all on the spectrum. That's also kind of why I put it out. And talking saved my life, basically. But then after that, because I write for children's books, we did get some interest from publishers saying, oh, would Laura like to write this more? I went to a few meetings and I just found the whole thing. I hadn't quite come to terms yet with what the voice of anxiety sounded like. So in my mind, my anxious voice, my voice of self-critique was somebody that I still thought was a psychotic voice. So as soon as I had that voice of doubt going, what do you think you're going to do? Make a life out of this, like make a career out of this? What you think you're going to do? Your psychosis is going to put you on Strictly Come Dancing or something, is it? That's when I started thinking, I can't do this. I'm not the person for the job. Backed out. And then I just started doing it, I guess, on my phone, bit by bit. I started thinking, and then I said to the editor, were you happy if I just send you chapters? I'm not going to look back at them. I'm just going to write it and send it and send it. And she said, I'm happy to do that. I didn't sign anything until I felt that was moving and going. And then it got to, I guess, I wrote it all in a couple of months, and then I went for a meeting and she said, are you ready to see it? and she brought out, I mean, literally it was this much, but I mean, the version you read is 85,000 words, but my final copy was 250,000 words. So it was over double that. And it just hit the tape. Like, I was just like, I'd done it all on my phone, so I'd not seen it printed out. And that's when I was like, wow, okay. But I put everything in there, and it saved my life. There is a form of therapy where you talk about the same thing, what happened, your trauma, over and over again, and it begins to distance itself from you, detach from you. You can see it like a piece of fiction, and that's what, I mean, after editing this, talking about it, doing interviews, whatever, I'm a bit bored of it, and it's lovely, because I never thought, I thought it was going to scare me and harass me forever, and actually the best response to fear is just boredom, normalizing it. You know, if you give in, it's all about fear. That is what drives it all. There is a difference, right, between two people. One person has an intrusive thought and goes, oh my God, I've got an intrusive thought. One person goes, oh, you again, get on with it, move on. It loses its sense of power. It turns the volume down on it. I think that's what's happened here.
Well, I mean, it's really funny. I think, Jade, there's a line in the show, isn't there, about, or there was at one point, I think maybe I've cut it in one of the edits, but that I wrote my way out of the darkness. That was the only thing that made sense to me, was to...
Well, no, I was literally listening thinking Emily wrote the show on the toilet with her phone, because she says it's the only place with my phone I could breastfeed, pee, hold a baby and do all those things. And pretty much the show's been written on her phone. So there's so many parallels between your two stories.
There
it's
are
incredible.
Parallels, yeah. I think that's amazing. And actually, Emily, your name's come up so many times now to me, of people, and turning your trauma into what you've done I just think that's the way to saving your own life, and it gives you a peace and understanding, acceptance with it, and humor. What medicine, like, and openness, dialogue. And the difference between recovery, of obviously not comparing anybody's recovery, but the difference between the women that I have met that are, you know, active with it, and they have said the more active you are of your recovery, the less chance of relapse. You know, if you're talking about it, helping others, turning it into new work, that kind of thing, rather than being scared of it, which, I mean, it's so easy to give into fear, it's so powerful, but I do believe that's the only way. What else do you do?
Yeah,
we haven't really got another choice.
No, and I think I have a friend who lost her son, and she used to say she hated being called brave, because in all of our situations, being brave means you have two choices. You either push through or you kill yourself. Those are your two choices. There's nothing brave in those choices. You know, and we made the choice, even though for us, you know, there was we had this suicidal ideation. So it was an option on the table. You know, we pushed through to the other side of that.
Emily, and this is controversial, but there's a lot of bravery in suicide. I mean, I when people say it's cowardly, it's like, that's the most scared I've ever been. And to people to do that, I'm like, wow, because when people attach the words weakness or selfishness or cowardliness to mental illness or suicidal thought or any of these topics we've talked about, no, they're not even, their words are not even connected. It's daily weightlifting. You're a psychological mental athlete if you are just being whilst these things are going on inside your mind and doing that. I just can't believe it.
No, I always say to battle your own mind would be the scariest thing that I could ever imagine happening. So hats off to anybody who has to deal with that, and whatever route they choose to take. I'm not here to judge you for that, literally, because I couldn't. There's no way out. There's no escape. You're in your own head all the time.
Yeah, totally that. And it only has to be a tiny glimmer of it. You know, I was watching Truman shows on Netflix now. It's so good. Such a good film. But I can't watch something like Truman Show the same way now that I've been where I've been. I go...
Totally. That's exactly how it feels.
I'm like, oh my fucking God. No, that is a whole new film now with a whole new meaning. I'm sure people, I don't know, but I'm sure the people that write Black Mirror, that write horror films, that write Inside Out, that write anything, you know, you've gone somewhere like that to be able to see the world in this new way, because you have that intelligence that it gives you, that power that it gives you to get through that. It plugs you into the world. It is a gift. And when you can see it like that, I mean, I wouldn't ask for it again, but I can definitely see the pros.
Yeah.
So when we all have babies, we obviously don't know what the hell we're doing the first time we do it, regardless of how much kids we've got around us. What was the biggest expectation you had on you as a mother that was a surprise almost, aside from the mental health issues? Like, or I don't know if you can take them away from each other. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I kind of just was jealous of anybody that had the mundane normality of it, you know, that was all the mums that were at playgroup going, oh God, I'm so tired. And I wasn't having that. I was getting a full 10 hours sleep, but that's because I was on so much medication, sleeping tablets, and I had to, my brain had to repair. And then I started introducing the bottle feeds back into it, for example. So then I was dragging myself up in the night. I mean, I still have to feed him in the night anyway, with the bottle. So even throwing him a bottle of milk across the room, it still interrupted sleep. But so doing that on such a high dose of medication was like really difficult. But that's the sort of thing I would be jealous of. You know, I wanted just to think to myself, oh, I just want to be covered in baby sick and moaning about winding and teething. But it seems so far down my list of things. So those kind of things. But now, again, thanking the illness for it, I do believe I'm a very chilled out mum, because I'm just like, God, the worst thing that could have happened to us kind of did. And I don't care now. You eat that whole bag of chocolate buttons at 10 o'clock at night and you have as much iPad time as you want. I literally don't care. And because of that, it's just in our house. It's okay. Like, because I've had it now. I know what bad looks like.
I love that. I think I'm a relaxed parent for that really very specific reason.
And also selfishly getting yourself back, right? Like you're trying to, and spent the last couple of years just trying to like muster up the courage to like go to the pub with a friend, for example, or do something, you know, buy a dress in a shop, that he's kind of just there. The kids are always fine. The kids are fine. Everyone spoils him, loves him. He's harassed by love. Like, I feel like it's important for us they call it oxygen masking, right? So that's why they give it to you on an airplane first. So you can't help your child until you're breathing yourself.
Yeah. Just before we wrap up, I guess, I'd really like to know is if you now could give you before having Jet a message, what would you say? What would you want her to know?
I guess it's a bigger message just about empathy, you know, and kindness in general. And I kind of thought I was those things until what's happened has happened. And you can never be too empathetic or understanding what somebody else is going through. And I think that what I've learned from this, you know, it's like just hang back and try and give everybody treat everybody that they might be going through something tough. You know, all everyone is doing their best. I'm sure of it.
There's one other thing as well that I want to ask. Everywhere you go, you're known as, so I'm known as Ray's mum, that's my daughter. Emily's known as Maisie's mum, and I imagine when you go somewhere, you're Jet's mum. What is the thing you would like to be known as? What identity would you like to give yourself?
Well, I don't think I have a choice, but I think at the moment we joke at the moment that I'm like, instead of Mother Goose, I'm Mother Noose. I'm pretty much the mum that rocks up to playgroup and is like, okay guys, have you heard of this? Or yeah, do you have these kind of thoughts? I'm like the real talk.
Oh God.
They can see me coming a mile off. I'm like town mayor, like ding, 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 mental health, maternal mental health. So haven't really got a choice. That's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. That's my place on this planet for the next couple of years. Sorry about that.
So you are Mother Noose.
I don't think you need to apologize for that.
No, it's beautiful.
Because I think the book especially will help people. But there's so much to be afraid of. There's so much to be afraid of. And so many things that people don't understand.
Well, I think knowledge is power. And I think also it's so scary what happened to me, what happened to you, Emily, what happened to everybody, even as you say, you saw pirates, Jade.
I swear to God.
Bloody hell. Not even fit one.
No, well, I was in labour for nearly 60 hours as well. So my mind my mind just went, where are we? I was on a treasure island clearly for a little bit.
madness, and they just expect us to just be fine. It's like
Exactly.
So, and that's all scary, but it's scarier not to know.
Yeah.
Like being in the dark about it that's the scariest thing. And actually, speaking to the nurses that cared for me at the psychiatric ward, they said no one had to ask if you had a history of mental health before, because it was all across your face. You were so scared. It was clear this was a terrain that was completely unknown to you. You had never seen anything like this before. And I think that's it. How they have they're still shoving protractors into kids' hands at school, and they're not teaching them about this is just beyond me, because everybody will at some point experience mental health issues up close and personal, if not themselves, someone they love and know. I think our whole country is on more antidepressants than all the other medication pushed together, and yet they still keep it a secret from young people, and it's insane. That is insane.
Yeah, 100%. And the more you talk about it, the less scary it is.
Totally. And you see people surviving, and successful people, people that go to their job. And I don't mean successful, I mean by famous. I mean people that are successful people, functioning, giving back to the world on medication, or surviving, or have battled something big, or not battled, lived with something big in the past, and they've got through it. And that's inspiring.
That's brilliant. That's amazing. Thank you so much for coming on,
Thanks, Laura. It was really nice having a chat with you.
You too.
And that was the amazing Laura Dockrill. You can follow her on socials at Laura Lee Dockrill on Instagram, at Laura Dockrill on Twitter. And don't forget, her amazing memoir is called What Have I Done? An honest memoir about surviving postnatal mental illness, and it's out now.
You can join the Good Enough Mums Club by following us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, searching Good Enough Mums Club. We'd love it if you can hit that subscribe button for the podcast, rate and review wherever you listen. And if you know a mum who'd like this, please tell them about it.
If the stories in this podcast resonated with you, or made you think, or even just reassured you that you are doing okay as a mum, you'll love the episodes we have coming up. Next time, we've got an interview with the amazing blogger and influencer, Tanuke Bernard.
Thank you so much for listening. Bye.
Bye.
How will I ever be good enough? When will the loneliness fade away? Why does it have to be so tough? Hard as I try, I'll never be good enough.